welcome all who have joined us, and a big thank you to our panelists, Ken Patsey, Pete Accorti, and Melissa Book, and also a thank you to Ann Schaum at Manufacturing Works for helping us organize and being on board to administer and help us on the back end here. To all of the audience participants, wanted to encourage you to feel free to use the chat function and ask questions on the fly. Ann is going to capture those, and toward the end of our discussion, we'll be doing a Q&A with the panelists throughout. So with that, I am going to give you some orientation here. My name is Dan Rose. I'm a local EOS implementer. The agenda for today is to talk about the following. First, what the heck is EOS? I'll spend maybe 6 or 7 minutes and just give you a high-level orientation. What is this? Where did it come from? How is it used inside organizations? We'll then ask the panelists to do a bit of a self-introduction, give a little bit about their background, the companies or organizations they work with, as well as how long they've been using EOS. I've got a series of panelist questions that we'll be asking them, and we'll have a bit of a dialogue there and just a give and take. We've got some polls that we're going to ask the audience. I think we've got 4 polling questions in particular that we'll be asking you, and our panelists are going to give some perspective and opinions on what they see and hear in response. And then at the conclusion, we'll be doing an audience Q&A open-ended. So with that, let's start with what the heck is EOS? So EOS, also known as the Entrepreneurial Operating System, it's a system for managing growth-oriented businesses. And I think it's simplest to think about it as just tools, templates, and process, and simple rules the day in the approach that EOS takes, because simple scales and simple is easy to understand and follow by all those inside of an organization. It's used by leadership teams and staff specifically to improve execution and scale. There is a understanding of those that are implementing EOS. Product market fit already has been validated, so it exists. We know that whatever service or product we take to market, there is market demand. We can produce it, scale it at a margins that are acceptable to us. What EOS does is just refine and improve how we go to market and execute that product market fit that we have, okay? So think of it in terms of 3 things that are delivered for EOS: vision, traction, and healthy. Vision in the context of getting everybody in the organization on the same page, and we like to say in alignment, but not necessarily in agreement. There is a difference. We want to make sure everyone, not just in a traction team or leadership team in the organization, is clear on where we're going, but everyone throughout the organization, long-term, short-term, and in between. Traction in the sense of if we're clear on where we're going and how we're going to get there, the traction is the piece that how do we measure our progress to make sure that we're on track. And we just implement simple tools to monitor that, to measure that, to help us calibrate and stay on track on vision on an ongoing basis. And then health, you'll recall I had mentioned alignment, not necessarily agreement. Healthy organizations openly, freely, and welcome some healthy conflict, healthy disagreement. I have a different perspective. I have a different point of view. That's welcomed and needed. And we also want everyone in an organization raising their hand and saying, hey, I see a better way. Hey, I have an issue. Hey, I have a challenge here. But we always do it in a respectful manner with each other. So that's the idea that EOS delivers on vision, traction, and health. Every organization has a management operating system, even if it is homegrown and patched together with baling wire and string. It's delivering the results that you have, whether they're good or bad. All of EOS is based on these library of books. Gino Wickman, the author of the book Traction, which is now 16 years old. There's over 1 million copies in circulation. There are now 7 total books in the library. And by the way, happy to forward those free of charge. Anyone that wanted a copy of that book Traction or any of the others, just let me know. A little bit about EOS. There's 11,000 companies that run on EOS. Here in Northeast Ohio, there are well over 150 plus. Entrepreneurial leadership teams are those that use them. 10 to 250 employees are sort of a sweet spot. There are companies slightly smaller than that. There are definitely companies larger. I work with both in those situations, but 10 to 250 are really more of a sweet spot to implement EOS. And then the hallmark is growth oriented and open-minded. And open-minded in the sense of, yeah, we might be modifying, tweaking, even improving upon what might be a good situation to make it even better. So lastly, I want to just talk briefly about the model in EOS. These 6 core components in the EOS model is what we focus on in improving the way that we operate any business or any organization, not-for-profit, that we work with. The 6 components are the vision piece, getting everybody clear on where we're going. The people component, right people, right seats. That's a Jim Collins sort of popularized phrase, getting the right people on the bus. The data component, making our decisions with as much fact-based hard data as we can, in addition to instinctual and experience-based, but data will rule the day when possible. When we get strong in the vision, people, and data components, that issues component starts to bubble up. What's holding us back? What's causing us to not be able to achieve our vision? If we've got right people, right seats, we are working on our data component and making decisions on hard fact-based data. What's holding us back? And there's a process that we teach in the issues resolution track in EOS, how we prioritize the most important things at any time. The process component is the 5th component. That is documenting our core processes to make sure that everyone in an organization understands how do we do the most important things the right and best way every single time. And that's how we can scale and make sure with checklists and audits and teaching tracks or teaching components that things are done the correct way for our organization. Then the last piece, and the name of the first book, Traction, those again are just the simple tools and templates and methodologies that we use that help us monitor, are we making progress toward that very first component, the vision piece that's above it. So those are the 6 core components. We talk about a scale of 1 to 100. 80% is the minimum goal that we shoot for in EOS. We don't think it's possible to achieve 100%. That's not realistic, but we want and we need to hit 80% simultaneously in all 6 core components to be able to really feel what I call a force multiplier. We're all moving in the same direction, using the same tools, speaking the same language. That's when you'll really get traction here. This eye chart or NASCAR slide is just a snapshot of some clients that I currently work with. As I had mentioned, there's well over 150 firms in Northeast Ohio operating on EOS currently, but I'll just pause for a moment so that you can absorb examples and hopefully you recognize a handful of the logos that are here. Happy at a different time to answer any questions about any of them, or I encourage you, if you know anyone at those particular brands, reach out to them, ask them their opinions and what they think about it. I'm sure they'd be happy to share with you. So with that, the last thing I'll mention before moving on to the next part of our agenda and asking the panelists for an introduction, we'll just let you know if you'd like a copy of that book, Traction, or wanted to ask more information, feel free to reach out to me at dan@teamtraction.com, and my phone number is there as well. So with that, panelists, I'm going to jump into a bit of a view here. Melissa, I've got you first in my views. I'm going to ask you just to give an introduction of yourself and your organization and share just a little bit about both, and then tell me how long you've been working in EOS.
Sure. Hi, my name is Melissa Book. I am the CFO at Kraft Fluid Systems, and I've been at Kraft for 6 years and worked in, my background is public accounting and then in finance. Kraft is in Strongsville, Ohio, and we are a distributor of engineered hydraulic systems. And we've been in business for 50 years. So we actually were kind of coming from a place of strength when we started using EOS. And we've been running on EOS for just under a year.
Perfect. Pete, you happen to be the next on my particular screen, so I'll ask you to do the same self-introduction. Tell us a little bit about you and your firm and how long you've been working with EOS.
Sure. So again, my name is Pete Accorti, and I'm president and co-owner of Talan Products. So we're a metal stamping company. We're very niche-y in our markets, primarily commercial construction, lighting, commercial lighting, solar, and as of 2020, electric vehicle components. We've been in business since 1986, and so we're very entrepreneurial. I came on in I think the first sales were 1987. I came on in 1988. So my partner Steve Pepler and I run the business, we began our implementation with EOS in March of 2020.
Perfect. And Ken, I'll ask you the same request of introduction.
Sure. Ken Patsey. I'm President, Executive Director of Manufacturing Works. We are a private nonprofit organization that was started, I think kicked off in '86, but incorporated in 1988. So it's been around for a while. And we basically help manufacturers, particularly small, mid-sized manufacturers, with all of their, pursue all their opportunities and their challenges. We're connectors. We have in our membership both manufacturing companies as well as service providers, so that we don't always are providing the solution. A lot of times we're just connecting the solutions providers with the manufacturers to help them achieve their dreams, as they say. I started with the organization in February of 2019. We started implementing traction with facilitation and help from Dan at the beginning of 2020. So it's been about a year and a half.
Great. Thank you to all of you. Again, it's a dialogue here. I'm going to ask you questions one at a time, but encourage you, if you have a additional perspective or want to add anything on, feel free to add. Melissa, I'm going to come back to you, and I'm going to ask you to start here. Tell us how you first heard about EOS, you or the organization, and do you recall anything about the first meetings or how you first started? Try to bring that to life a little bit for the audience.
Sure. So we first heard about EOS through our CEO. Our CEO sits on a board of another company locally that has been running on EOS for like 3 to 4 years, I think. And as she learned more about it, she felt that the tools that EOS provides would transfer well to Kraft, especially in a period of succession. So she's actually retiring at the end of this year. And as her successor and myself step into that like executive leadership roles, she just felt that the tools that EOS provides might be a really good platform for us to transfer into those roles. So that was how we first heard about it. What was interesting is when we informed our board of directors that we were going to begin implementing EOS, one of our board of directors that owned a company in Wisconsin, his company had run on EOS. So it was kind of interesting, and he fully supported our transition into using those tools as well. So that's how we started learning about it, and we began implementing in September, I believe, of last year. The first 6 months, probably, we just did our senior leadership team before we rolled it out to everyone, which might have been a little slower than some other companies, but it was what worked for us. Those first meetings were eye-opening, not always comfortable for everyone personally, just because it challenged you. It challenged us to step outside of our little my little siloed finance world, and really think about all aspects of the business and what that vision was to move forward, and help get the senior leadership team more aligned to that, which maybe we weren't totally off base before, but certainly some alignment needed to happen, and it kind of facilitated that for us. So eye-opening, not always comfortable, but in the end, most of the times when things are eye-opening and not comfortable, they're worth it. So
Great experience, Share. I'll comment that I have multiple clients that I work with that are in some form of succession plan and are using EOS to help support that process. So not uncommon. Pete, let me move to you and ask, how many people are on the traction team or leadership team, sometimes it's called, and what roles do they represent there at Talan Products?
So our leadership team, there's 8 people on the leadership team. So we're relatively flat, probably to a fault, actually. And it's something we're working on this quarter. But there's currently 8 people. So that's my 6 direct reports. So operations, maintenance, supply chain, quality, HR, and accounting, all those leaders. And then myself as integrator and my partner, Steve Copeland, as the visionary, and he's currently sitting in the interim sales leader position. So that's our team.
Perfect. Ken, is that similar in composition to what you're experiencing at Manufacturing Works? I know you're a little bit of a different flavor here as a not-for-profit and association, but what does the composition look like for your team, for the traction team?
It's interesting to hear Pete characterize the situation, because when I came in, we have a relatively small staff. There's 15 people, and then we have 5 outside consultants, and everybody was pretty senior. So when it came to try to choose who should be in that leadership room, it was difficult. And I kind of bailed on making the tough decisions and just basically invited a bunch of people in. So we started with 8 as well, which you can do the math, was basically half the organization. And we found out immediately in that first meeting that was really difficult to make progress, make decisions, move forward with any pace with that many people relative to the size of the organization being in the room. And it really took addressing the difference between accountability and managing to distinguish who should be in that room. So the fact that you were in that room and were accountable for something didn't mean that you were the one doing it, right? It just meant that the reporting of that was going to come up through you to the group, the leadership group. And so once we sort of understood that organizationally, it became easier to sort of pick and choose. And now there are 5 of us in the room, and it's basically, we're set up by sort of large program areas. So it's really Ann is the integrator, and then 3 program heads and myself.
Perfect. And Ann, if you're keeping score, that's 5 points for Ken for referencing accountability doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do it to execute. So Ken, nicely done. Pete, let me come back to you and ask what appealed to you about EOS and caused you to decide to implement it and use it to operate Talan Products?
So I've been a member of a Vistage group for 13 years. So, in Vistage, you're continuously exposed to best practice. So we began to see members implementing EOS, say 3 or 4 years ago. And our chair, Brad Roller, who obviously knows Talan well, knows my flat spots, knows the organizational structure well, really began to encourage me, and I would say possibly hound me to take a look at EOS. And it did take me a while, but it was really Vistage and specifically Brad that kind of said, you really need to take a look at this. And then so that was the start. And then once I read Traction and began to understand a little bit, I pulled in a couple of members of the leadership team and said, I think this is a direction for us. So we actually read Traction together, and then I, because I knew that they were going to be crucial or critical pieces of the implementation. So that was how we got started.
Perfect. Ken, I'm going to ask you a slightly different version of a similar question there, and just ask about the pains or challenges that you saw as someone relatively new to the organization that maybe led you to decision to also implement EOS at Manufacturing Works.
Sure. when I joined, as I say, at the beginning of 2019, the first thing I did, of course, was talk to all the staff, get their perspective on the organization. And a common theme was that everyone felt that we were very siloed as an organization. So, I knew that had to do with how we operated, right? And the only way to change that was to change how we operated. At the same time, because we have a small staff, everybody's multitasking. And probably the one major area that got short shrifted was HR, and particularly employee development. And so I had to find something that would address both, creating an operating system for us to function, as well as working on employee development. And then I also looked at myself as the titular leader of the organization and said, hey, operations really was not my strength. So I was going to be the person to be able to solve this by myself. And that's when we really had to consider a system. Interestingly, I had experience at my previous organization, with Traction, with EOS. As I read it, I was educated on it, and I thought it was sort of brilliant in terms of after reading it. It frankly didn't go well when I was at the company I was at, and I felt that was because they quote unquote self-implemented, and so it never was implemented. And so but because I thought it would provide a lot of the structure that we needed to get out of our silos, to get on the same page, to develop our people, we went ahead and decided to go with it and have it be facilitated. And I think that made all the difference in the world.
Have you noticed, Ken, differences or changes in the operations, or maybe the performance, the outputs, the outcomes since you've been implementing EOS?
Yeah, what I've noticed is that we're working together much better, and there's sort of side benefits that I didn't anticipate. Just in communicating better across the organization is leading to opportunities. As an organization, we talk with literally hundreds of companies every year, and there are opportunities, frankly, with almost every company to be involved. And a lot of those were going by the wayside just because they weren't getting communicated across the organization. And now they are. And everybody understands that we're all on the same page. We're all trying to accomplish the same things. So I think that not only allows them to do it, but encourages them to do that kind of communication across the organization. So we've definitely seen an improvement in that dramatically, I would say, in the year and a half we've been doing this.
Peter, Melissa, same question. Have either of you noticed any changes in the operational outputs or maybe performance components of your company since you've implemented EOS?
I think we've rolled it out to our folks, probably only the whole company for the last 3 months, but I will say you can see the traction of things getting done. Sometimes we're successful in spite of ourselves, and that we have a successful company, but there's a lot of little improvements that we certainly could make, and maybe we'd start down that path before, but then get pulled back from it quickly because of, just needing to pivot in the organization. But where I feel like now we have more eyes on the ball to keep it moving and are actually doing that. So that's probably one outcome that is I can see a change in. And then, like Ken mentioned, communication, while it's not ringing the register necessarily for an outcome standpoint, I think it has definitely increased communication. I wouldn't call it like the cure for communication, but it's on the path to that. Like, it's dramatically helped us here with that.
Melissa, can you remind the audience, how long did you and the Traction team or leadership team work together before you were ready to quote unquote roll it out, which you said is just 3 months ago?
Yeah, it was about 6 months probably before we felt like we were aligned. I mean, I think within a month we felt like the 6 of us were communicating better and kind of getting in more of a rhythm to move the business forward and set our objectives. we wanted to be real intentional how we rolled it out and how it was going to kind of weave through the organization and not create more work for everyone or have them feel like it was. So we wanted to be really solid before we rolled it out to everyone. So it was about 6 months. We rolled it out to everyone like in April.
Perfect. Pete, any other thoughts or comments on changes or performance metrics you've seen since you've implemented at Talan?
Yeah, I'd say, I think, our experience is very similar. I mean, I think the thing about EOS for us and probably everyone is it keeps you focused on the most important things all the time. I mean, there's just and I don't think there's any other sort of approach that will keep you focused on the most important things all the time, every week, every day. So that's been a change for us, where, sometimes you would, you would lose momentum, and we don't lose momentum anymore. The other thing for us, and this was brought up by both Melissa and Ken, is that for us, collaboration is a core value. So it's always been really important. It's one of our 4 core values. And yet with EOS, we've become even more collaborative. I mean, because the networks have just expanded. So people are, working on things together, working on issue solves or, co-owning a rock. And it's just been, so our level of collaboration has gone up significantly.
Yeah, I heard you mention rock there. Just for those in the audience that aren't familiar with the verbiage used in EOS, what is a rock? Pete?
That's a question for me.
Yeah,
quarterly
yeah,
goal.
sorry,
Yeah.
just following up.
I'm sorry, quarterly goal.
Yeah, it's
I
a
thought you were
quarterly
putting that
goal.
out to the audience. Do
No,
I get
no,
points for that?
Yeah,
5 points.
yes,
Hey,
7
And
points.
if you're keeping score,
Got it.
So just to
quarterly goal,
clarify,
yeah.
just to clarify, so we're all on the same page. I heard you say it's a quarterly goal. Everybody in an organization ultimately has a rock or 2. So you get everybody rowing in the same direction toward that same common shared vision with the most important priority they could be oriented around for that particular quarter. And then marshal our resources, our time, our energy, our money, because we have limitations around those, right? We marshal all of that in the same direction, and we're not competing knowingly or unknowingly for limited resources. So I just wanted to make sure that we understood what rocks are. And there's a reason we call them that. There's a metaphor around that, but that's a different story for a different day. Melissa, let me come back to you. You mentioned, and you were the first to bring up sort of this prioritization of issues. Talk to me about how much time EOS takes. Is it extra work? I think you said something like not trying to make extra work, just trying to make the priorities, but is it extra work or is it replace somehow the way you operate? Can you speak to that?
Sure. So I would say for us, the actual implementation, devising how this is going to make changes within our organization might have been extra work. Just again, like I said, we were just trying to be real thoughtful on how we weaved it into our current, successful company and how to make it just grow us even further. So that might have been a little extra work. I'd say it's work we wanted to do, work we needed to do. As far as kind of almost a year in the actual rhythm of operating with EOS, I think it's more replacing. It definitely takes those kind of ad hoc, putting out fire type of meetings that you run around the office having, and kind of puts them into more of a concentrated meeting, and where you're, working towards specific objectives. You're prioritizing what the hot topics are in the company and what the issues are and how to address them now. So you're kind of, I wouldn't say you're getting to it before the fire happens, because there's still fires to put out, but it's definitely more controlled because you're having those specific meetings where you're prioritizing and what the needs of the company and the issues are in the company now. So I'd say that part definitely is more replacing, which is a good thing. I'd rather have a more structured pace to address some of these things than just running around putting out fires all day. So
What in follow-up, what is something, Melissa, that's maybe surprised you about the implementation of EOS, either that you weren't expecting or that just was a pleasant surprise, or maybe a not so pleasant surprise? But what's something that surprised you about the implementation to date?
So I guess one thing that surprised me is I think we were, as a leadership team, like I said, very thoughtful in how we were going to roll this out to our whole organization. And it surprised me a little bit how much I think people really were looking for something like this. Like, people have really embraced the tools, almost in a, like, I think we have a culture. I think leadership has thought we had a culture where people could bring ideas or problems, and we'd work on them and, you know, help the company grow, but maybe we didn't have the great platform to do that. And people are like excited about that. They get a voice. Where we thought they had one anyways, but maybe they didn't know that they did. So that's been surprising. And even like the rocks, these quarterly goals, people want to grow. People want to grow in the business, and they're excited to take on new challenges that maybe would have been delayed if we hadn't for this kind of platform to work off of. So I guess just the involvement and excitement of the line and rank and file employees and everybody, you know, not just a leadership excitement, but the whole organization is really bought into it.
You know, we talk about the importance of a representative voice across the organization. And that's what I was hearing you say. Even if we don't necessarily agree with each other, if I have a voice, I'm more prone then to making a commitment to that shared direction that we're going. I just need to be heard, et cetera. So great point. Ken, let me ask you a variation of that question, but I'm just going to say, Ken, it's you and I on this call now. Nobody else is listening in. It's just you and I, and maybe we're sitting on your back deck, and I lean in, I say, Ken, if we have that private conversation, and I'm a close friend, don't know much about EOS, and I ask you, is there a downside to all this? And what is the downside to EOS? What do you think you'd say? And what, if anything, do you think you or your team could do about that downside?
Well, I would say that, you know, the downside is because it's such a comprehensive system, you can't go at it, you know, in a half-assed kind of way. I mean, you have to be all in, and you have to make sure that everybody else is all in. And so you have to bring along the organization together at a certain pace. We ran into an issue because the leadership team was operating at a faster pace, so to speak, than were our individual groups. And we did not pick that up quick. I didn't pick that up quickly enough. And so we got to a point in a meeting where we were just sort of saying, hey, how's this going? Where it was clear that people felt there were things going on in a room that they weren't in that impacted the organization in ways they didn't have a voice in, and to your point before. And so we just realized you have to be really diligent that the concepts, because they're typically kind of new concepts, or it's new language, right? Language is so important. So you're starting to use a new language, that everyone is coming along together, and that it's their language too. You know, that it's not just your language because you're in some position of in the organization, but that everybody's adopting it. So I say that's the challenge. Since we've addressed it, you know, we've got momentum back going again, and it's confirmed to us the value of it. But you got to be careful with that, I'd say.
So Ken, in follow up, can you share a couple of highlights? Have there been one or two highlights that you've seen for you or your team post implementation thus far?
Yeah, I would say that probably our biggest highlight was we have a program called CIRI, the Cleveland Industrial Retention Initiative, and it's a specific group of people that do outreach for us, and it's a contract for the city of Cleveland, and we're there to work with the city to help all of the manufacturers in the city of Cleveland. When I joined, I saw that group was operating very separately from our program group. and there wasn't real integration. And I really felt both could benefit if we saw that integration, so that the companies that we were working with for the city of Cleveland could benefit from the programmatic things that we were doing, and vice versa. And we've really started to see that happen. We introduced a new program called Growth and Transition, where we help businesses transition their management or their ownership. And our first transaction that we were involved with, both of the companies were Siri companies, not even member companies of our organization, that found us through the Siri network. And we had a very successful transaction and saved 17 jobs here in Cleveland, et cetera, et cetera. So absolutely, we've seen very specific results from this.
Perfect. So Pete, let me ask you if everybody in the company there at Talan is involved in EOS in some way now, and do they get involved in a weekly or bi-weekly type meeting, or can you speak to that?
Sure. I mean, relative to rollout, what we have at Talan right now is 3 teams running in addition to the leadership team. So we have a leadership team, L10. We also have a production team, sales team, and a supply chain customer service team. So we have 3 additional teams. So it would be a stretch to say that everyone in the organization is involved, but those teams are really having an impact. So that's actually one of the most exciting things for me, is actually seeing the work that's coming out there and seeing the people that are doing that work. Occasionally we're delegating things out of the leadership team, L10, to some of the other teams. So, how we roll it out company-wide is an open question for us. It's really not on our sort of annual goals right now. It's not a priority for us. I think it is slowly. I'm not saying it shouldn't be a priority. It's not a current priority. I think people are starting to see this work, though, because some of these other teams, like the production team has a lot of initiatives going on. So they're pulling additional people into those initiatives to achieve whatever goals that they're working on. So it's exciting. It's one of the most exciting things for me.
Melissa, you said there are approximately, I think, 50 some staff at Kraft Fluid Systems.
Correct.
Could you comment? I know you said you're only a few months into your rollout right now. And your organization is a little different in that you've got some people working in a sort of shipping, delivering type capacity. Could you speak to how do those meetings work in Kraft? Are they weekly? Are they bi-weekly? Can you speak to that?
Currently, like our warehouse has kind of our technician and then our shipping and receiving, and they are meeting weekly right now. We've noticed at first those meetings were longer. They were the first few, like the first month maybe, were like an hour, just to they were still trying to figure out how to do it and what the rhythm looked like and what the objectives were. I've noticed in the last month or so, those meetings have shortened because they've learned how to just kind of discuss what matters, go over what their scorecard or their metrics that they're looking at, shipping and receiving errors, things like that. There isn't as much discussion about them because everybody knows what it means and what they need to do about it now. So yeah, they're still meeting weekly, but they are definitely shortened time period. So I say they're down to like a half an hour for our warehouse guys. And then our other departments, engineering, customer service, sales has moved to bi-weekly just because they learned that that's the rhythm that made sense for them. So I'd say we're starting to adjust to what fits.
Yeah, and we talk about sort of customizing application of EOS to each and every organization that's adopting it, and even the groups within it, whether it's a weekly meeting, a bi-weekly meeting. We talk about stand-up meetings sometimes. It might only be 15 minutes for certain groups, but it's the glue or the continuity and the fabric that keeps the entire organization together. Information flows up, information flows sideways, issues arise, and they're resolved all throughout the organization. And love the comment you had made about, what's the scorecard metric important to that particular group, and how are we doing, and what can we do to change and modify? So great insight. Let me ask you and follow up, Melissa. EOS talks about helping you achieve what you want from the business. And that's a very personal sort of question for every single individual in any entity, no matter what your role responsibility is. But that's part of what EOS has a promise to deliver. Have you found that to be true for yourself? And can you share with this audience, what do you want, or what are some examples of what you hope to accomplish personally and for Kraft Fluid Systems? And have you found that to be true? Is EOS helping you accomplish that?
Sure. So I guess selfishly, I sit in the finance role, and I also do HR because we're 50 some people. We don't have a designated HR department. So selfishly, like, I just am I love to learn. I've always been an avid reader. I just love to, I worked in public accounting, so I was always out at different manufacturing sites learning about their businesses, and that's just something that gives me energy. And at times I would feel like I was a little siloed with it at Kraft, being apart from kind of our vendor relations and customer relations and things like that, through our sales and operations departments. So knowing that I was kind of moving into more of an executive leadership role, I really felt like I need and want to have a desire to learn more about all these little, pieces of the business that don't always cross my path. I would say that I probably would have done it regardless, just in a different fashion. I feel like this has provided a great roadmap for me to really tune in and have others in the organization realize why and how and I should tune in, and also that why it's good for the business to do that. So selfishly, I'd say that, it gave me more of a voice in areas of the business that I didn't have as much of one. I'd say also, because I kind of sit in that HR role, and we're actually employee owned, 100% employee owned. So I get energized and get excited about everybody at the business understanding how they impact our company's value. And for 5 years that I've been here, I've done different presentations. These are the items on the balance sheet and income statement that certain departments have an impact on. I think, and I want people to be excited about that and see how, less shipping errors means, builds that relationship with the customer, which means that when we have a price increase to pass on, they are maybe that much more apt to just accept it and not fight it, because they know we're reliable, and to work that in and how that impacts our gross margin, which impacts our operating income, which impacts our value. Like, I want people to know that their shipping, not having shipping errors, is important to the whole reason why we're here. So I think selfishly, like, this has also provided a little more line of sight. Like, I've been trying to do it, and it gives me another way to, rather than maybe annually or quarterly, try to drive that home. It's a weekly thing now. They they know that we care about how many shipping errors there are, and have a little bit clearer line of sight as to why it matters. And I hope that energizes them, and really get some, knowing they have a good place to work, that what they do matters.
We talk about understanding the importance, your role responsibility, no matter where you are in the organization, it matters.
Mm-hmm.
And with clarity, EOS provides, here's how you are contributing, and let's measure that in a positive way. And it really does make a difference and impact every single person. So that's
right. And it gives me energy, and knowing that we're providing that to people.
Yeah. So 8 points to you, because I believe in EOS is yielding that energy, and we can work longer, more efficient hours when we are working in a place of energy, right? Rather than dreading going to work, right? I like what I do. That's
Right.
part of the promise of delivery as well. So, hey, Ken, let me wind up our questions for the panel here. I'm going to ask all three of you the same question to conclude, and then we're going to move to do some polling here. The question that I have for you, Ken, and for everyone is, we've got a number of tools that we teach during our journey using EOS and implementing. I'd love to hear which of the number of tools that you have used so far is maybe your favorite. What stands out about it? And if you do me the favor, describe it. You can label it. I mean, what is the tool? But then describe it. How is it used, and why is it your favorite at Manufacturing Works?
Well, one of the reasons I look for tools that can apply to outside of the work environment, to other things that I do in my life. And the tool that I find most useful in so many ways is referred to as IDS, which is the problem solving process used on a regular basis. It's kind of the core of the regular meetings under Traction. And it's I to identify the issue. D is to discuss it. And then S is to solve it. And so what I like about the process is, and what's very interesting is, one, you surface issues. I mean, so part of it is at the core of what we're trying to do is surface issues, as Dan referred to before, that sort of get in our way of success. And then you clarify what that issue is. You prioritize, right? So you sort of lay out as a team what are the issues, and then as a team, you can't go after everything all at the same time. So you have to prioritize. You agree on which ones should be prioritized, and then you clarify what that issue is. And it's amazing when you're forced to clarify what an issue is. The work that it takes to sometimes get there. You sort of think what an issue is, but when you really go to verbalize it, it forces you to clarify, and then everybody gets to say, "Yeah, I get it. I understand what you're saying, and I agree. That's the issue." And you go around the room, and everybody gets input on that process, and you almost never end up with what you first say. It always evolves, and more often than not, it ends up that it's not a single issue, right? That there are multiple issues within an issue. So I like that part of identification. And then the discussion, again, everybody has a chance to participate. Everybody's asked to participate and give their view on what that issue is about, what we need to do about it, et cetera. And then in the same way with the solution. And the solution involves a plan of action. We need to solve it, and here's how we're going to solve it. And at that point, you talk about who does what and who's accountable for what. And so it's, I think, a very robust process around solving issues. I've actually taken this approach to my board. And the thing I like about it is it's helped me evolve. I've been trying to evolve our board meetings being me reporting out to them, and have it the other way, where the organization, myself and the organization, is getting the benefit from all these great people that we have in the room when we have a board meeting. And so this allows the board to help identify important issues at a high level, and then also engages them in what are the solutions. And if you have we have 20 plus people on our board, and when you have that many people in the room, it's hard to get everybody to participate. Most groups have a couple that dominate. Well, this doesn't allow domination. It sort of forces everyone to participate. So I really enjoy that part of it. So IDSing is really, my favorite part of my favorite tool.
Yeah, Ken, I'll make one comment, and then Pete, I'm going to ask you your favorite tool. Ken, the comment I would make about IDS, identify, discuss, solve, is this. In my experience, it is not at all uncommon to spend more time on the I portion, the identify portion, dig right down to the core. And as you said, sometimes you unearth 2, 3 separate but related issues. And it takes us 15, 20 minutes to get into alignment in a leadership room of, oh, we've actually got 3 separate issues. We now are in alignment around what they are. We've defined them simplistically. Let's attack this one first. Now let's attack this one. Now let's attack this one. And we end with a smart written action item. That's the solve, with ownership and a time frame for completion and a description of what does done look like. So big fan of the IDS. Pete, let me ask you the same question. Of all the tools that you understand and you've been working with, which one is your favorite? And just like Ken had done, if you could just label it, describe it, and bring it to life a little bit for the audience.
Sure. So mine would be the weekly L10 meeting. So the L10 is a 90-minute leadership. Well, for us, for a leadership team meeting that takes place every week at exactly the same time. It starts on time, it ends on time. Has this very structured agenda. So the agendas are, you kind of set the tone with a good news check-in, which sometimes is kind of fun. Then you do a scorecard review, which is really metrics review, rock review, again, goals review. Are these things on track, off track? I mean, that's really the question you're asking. Customer employee headlines, a review of the prior week's to-do list, and then describing what Ken just talked about was you move into issue resolution or issue processing. So that actually takes the last hour. So those first sections take 30 minutes, and you leave an hour for issue processing. So it's, for me, it's very impactful and it's comprehensive. You're touching a lot of different components of EOS in that 90 minutes. It drives action every week, which I really like. It's where we convene. It's where we continue to refine our skills. Relative to EOS, it's where we stay engaged with each other and with EOS. And so for me, it's just, it's just really impactful. Now, having said all that, when I first had to start as integrator, right? So integrator has to facilitate this meeting. Terrified would be a strong word. I wasn't terrified, but I've got, it's like now, okay, we are not used to operating like this. We're not used to, and actually, I think we started out virtually, or no, we barely got a couple meetings in person before we had to go virtual. But it was, I had to prep for 15, 20 minutes. I had to get myself ready. Now it's just like, okay, good to go. But it was a heavy lift. The other thing I'll say is when we were looking at implementing EOS, I would talk to people that have, and I said, really, you can meet for 90 minutes a week? Mm-hmm. So we've done about 70 L10s now, and I think we finished one early. Right. So the rest of them have finished on time. So, and interestingly, now one of the guys on the leadership team meeting is taking one meeting a month where he's facilitating. So that's great. He's usually my scribe, but that gives me a break. And yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to offer that recommendation for you, Pete. I am a big fan of having others on that team, one by one, taking responsibility for running that meeting. They'll learn it better.
Yeah.
It allows you to, on occasion, be sick, go on vacation, be Pete, go fishing, whatever it looks like for you. Right. So the show goes on, right? The company doesn't stop just because Pete isn't there for it.
Yeah, exactly.
So, hey, there's one piece of that before I move Melissa to you, Pete, that I want to ask you. There's a conclude part of those meetings. That's an important thing to mention. There's three components. We talk about what we call cascading messages. Who else needs to know something that went on in this meeting outside the meeting? Two, what are the to-dos, which is what you mentioned. Those are 1 week action items that have accountability and clarity, who owns what. And then we rate the meeting. Can you speak to that just for a minute? What do we mean by that? Rate the meeting.
All three, or just the rating?
Just the rating.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we go around the table or around the screen, I guess, and people rate the meeting 1 to 10. So, and typically, if it's below 8, you're supposed to give, okay, how could we improve? On my team, everybody always wants to talk, whether they give it a 9 or a 7, they're always going to give some feedback, which is fine because we actually collect all that. So we actually have a document that's got all the ratings in there. But and I take all that to heart. I mean, I think most of it is really good. So our scores are generally really high.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what I've seen is it also gets a little bit biased, because if the first person comes in and gives a 9, well, there's a couple, 2 or 3 people that will make sure if it's a 7, they're going to give it a 7. But people get a little biased as the first 3 or 4 come in.
Yeah.
It tends to score a little higher. I'm like, come on.
As you had said, if someone gives it a 7, you ask honestly, openly, what can we do to get this to a 9 or a 10?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Our time is way too valuable to be doing 7s for me. A 7 is a C-. That's a 70% of that.
Yeah.
Way too valuable to that. What did we miss? Did we not follow an agenda? Did we not have a interesting conflict type conversation? Did we not prioritize? What happened? So we got to get.
Did we not define the issues? Did we not define the issues well enough?
9s and 10s, yeah. So Melissa, same question, and then we're going to open it up to some polling and questions from the audience. Melissa, what's your favorite tool, and can you describe it, bring it to life for us?
Sure. So mine is something we're actually just now kind of getting to recently. It's called Delegate to Elevate. And it essentially is an exercise where you would compile all of your weekly or monthly, whatever fits you, functions of your job and your roles and responsibilities, and challenges you to categorize them. So you essentially have a quadrant, like a 4-quadrant, where the top section would have one side is, I love doing this part of my job and I'm really good at it. So it energizes me. I'm excited about coming to work when I get to do these things. I don't dread it at all. The other side on the top would be, I like doing it and I'm good at it. So again, maybe it doesn't like really get me fired up, but it's in my sweet spot. Then the bottom half, the one side is, I don't really like it, but I'm good at it. So, okay, this is just part of my role. And then the other side is, I don't like it and I'm not even good at it. So rather than just kind of accepting that, like, this is my job function and these are all the things I do, whether I like them or not, which I think a lot of us have done or do or are doing it throughout our careers, it challenges you to say, like, recognize what the things are that energize you and that ultimately then provide more value to your business, to your company and its growth. And what are the things that I'm doing that are a drag and I'm not even really that good at them? And rather than just accepting them, saying, I wonder if there's anyone else in the organization that for them, that would be in the love it and really good at it category. And maybe we ought to realign some things so we can train that person to do some of those things. So then ultimately it gets out of my not good at it and don't even like it bucket and puts it in the right person's hands where they can grow. So that's kind of how it works. So we're just going through these exercises first from like a leadership team standpoint. And it's eye-opening. It does help you like just kind of put it on paper, what are those things are. And again, I kind of have mentioned in other comments, like I want people to grow and like their jobs and feel like there's a path here. So if we can identify things that the right person isn't doing them and we can put it in the hands of someone and train them that now they are energized by it, how is that's going to elevate all of us and as a company push us towards growth.
And we talk about if you had 20 some odd roles, responsibilities, or tasks that are very common in a week or a month, let's say you've got 5 or 6 that are below the bar in that I'm good at it, but I don't like it, or I am not good at it and I don't like it. The hope is we can remove a few of them. Realistically, particularly in smaller organizations, it's just not realistic to blindly say, oh, I'm going to get rid of this and rid of this. But we do think we can identify a few to find other people in the organization that might be in alignment with, wow, they love doing it, they're great at it. Or on occasion, Melissa, we talk about, should we consider outsourcing this piece of it? Because it takes Melissa 8 hours a week to do that. She absolutely abhors doing it and it drains her energy. And by the way, if we did that, we can elevate her to focus on things that provide greater value than the cost of outsourcing it. That's another alternative consideration. But just being aware of what those are and having the leadership team identify across the organization where there might be opportunities to improve alignment for what people are doing, that's the big payoff. So
And
great.
just personally, like there's been, so like I said, I kind of sit in the HR seat as well. And there's some things with benefits and it's fine, I'll do it. But to go over like our benefits with new employees and things, it's just not my sweet spot.
Right.
Don't mind doing it, and there's someone in my department that wants to be an HR professional. Like she's just kind of starting out in that. She
Yeah.
loves it and
Perfect.
she's good at it. And it makes her feel empowered and like she's growing and it energizes her. Wow.
Perfect.
Perfect.
We just
Yeah.
identified something really cool from that. So,
Yay.
right.
Yeah. So thank you for all three of you answering that question about your favorite tool. And based on our timing, I'm going to ask if we could poll P-U-L-L, some of our polls, P-O-L-L. Audience, we've got 4 questions to ask you. And on a scale of 1 to 5, we're going to ask you to log in your answers here. And then the panelists are going to just speak to it for a moment. The first question that we have for you, audience, on a scale of 1 to 5, how would you grade this statement? Quote, our entire organization is clear and aligned around the plan for our future. And you can interpret that comment, the plan, any way you want, okay? How aligned is our entire organization? And are they clear around, quote, the plan for our future? Scale of 1 to 10, or excuse me, scale of 1 to 5. 1, not clear or aligned at all. 2, employees are aware we have a plan. 3, some employees are aligned and work the plan. 4, most employees are aligned and work the plan. 5, everyone is aligned and work the plan. So those of you who had responded, panelists, I'm just going to ask you to give some feedback here in a moment. And you'll have to remind me, I think when we end the poll, all the results can pop up for them. And so I'm seeing it. Do you then stop the poll live and can show the results?
You should now be seeing the results.
Oh, okay, perfect. So panelists, I see that we've got 14% not clear or aligned, 29% employees are aware. The majority, 43%, said some employees are aligned and work the plan. One had said most employees are aligned and work the plan. No one said everyone is aligned and works the plan. I'm going to ask the 3 panelists, as you reflect back on when you started EOS, and again, the majority here are saying, well, some are aligned and work the plan, but that means that some are not. And we had a few that were below the bar as well. Employees are at least aware that we have a plan, but not working it, and some not aligned at all. Can you reflect in going back in time a year and a half when you first started? How would you have answered that? And do you see any surprises on the responses to this particular poll? Anyone?
I don't.
Go ahead, Pete.
Go ahead, Ken. No, go ahead.
I would say that what we learned was, it's hard for anyone to align with a plan that they haven't had a voice in. And so one of the things I might advise people is when you do this, what we did was, the leadership group, the traction team put together the long-term plan as the basis, et cetera, and then roll everything out to the organization without that input. And so that, in hindsight, that was a mistake. So that, some of us were in because we created it. Those that didn't help create it weren't really aligned with the plan necessarily, right? So that'd be my comment.
Pete, did you want to add something?
Well, what I would say is the thing is, it's also hard to understand a plan that's not necessarily built to be simple and actionable. So relative to EOS, that's really what you end up with, is something that's really easy to understand and articulate. And then as you are working it throughout the organization, a lot more people do become involved and do understand it. So for us, we're still clearly in the number 3 box, but we have a lot more people that do understand it and that are actually working towards it every week, every day.
Yeah, and one of the tools that we have in EOS, it's called the VTO, Vision Traction Organizer. I just nickname it the 2-page business plan. That's it. So the simplicity of having a 2-page business plan maybe speaks, Pete, to what you were mentioning there. And if you wouldn't mind putting up another poll question there for the audience, we're asking about on a scale of 1 to 5, how effective are the meetings at your company? And we're talking about across the entire organization, everyone. Scale of 1 to 5. 1, meetings are unproductive. 5, meetings are productive with clear objectives that have been met. And then anywhere in between. So scale of 1 to 5. How effective are your meetings at the company? And we'll leave that open just for another minute and then ask panelists to give a response here. We've got 11% are giving it a 2 in terms of productivity, 22% a 3. We've got the majority at a 4 in terms of productivity, and then number 5, meetings are productive with clear objectives that are met by all is a 1. Any surprises there, Melissa, from you if you reflect back on a year ago in terms of productivity?
Yeah, I would say a year ago, one of the answers could be what meetings? So maybe not even a 1 on that standpoint, at least throughout the organization. But honestly, I'd say we were probably at a 1 and we're probably more at a 4 or 5 now. Just getting in the rhythm of doing them and seeing the traction that's building.
Yeah.
Just like working out, once you start doing it, you see the results and you want to start doing it more. So yeah, we went from what meetings to probably a 4.
And then having meetings that are not only predictable because of the same time, same location, very structured in terms of an agenda, but very customized in that the content changes every single week. The metrics change every single week. The issues change every single week. So
right.
Those are effective. So Anne, I think we've got another poll. Can we put up another one for the audience here? This one is on a scale of 1 to 5. How would you grade this statement? Quote, our core processes are documented, simplified, and followed by all to consistently produce the results we want. A 1 is I completely disagree. A 3 is neutral. I somewhat agree. I somewhat disagree. A 5 is I completely agree, meaning all of our core processes are documented, simplified, and followed by all to consistently produce the results we want. And so as we get those responses as well, and it's kind of across the board here a little bit, we've got a third saying 2 and a third saying 4, and then we've got a few that are neutral and also completely agree. Ken, any feedback or responses there as you think of yourself a year plus ago with core process documentation? And before you answer, I'm going to bias a little bit for everyone's sake and just say in EOS, we talk about it takes a year plus to truly document our core processes, sometimes a couple of years. But any comments, observations when you reflect back on where you were a year plus ago?
Yeah, I think for us, this really was a start from scratch almost. Just the whole concept of core processes. We realized that we didn't have processes in some cases. So this is we're probably least far along with core processes as we are anything else that has to do with traction or just development of our organization. Because it's, this is kind of a nitty gritty. It's not always real sexy stuff. And it's just discipline, and you got to get people to lay it out and follow it, et cetera. So this is the kind of the grind of running an organization in many ways, not always, but in many ways. And so we're getting to it. We're getting to it, but we got a long way to go still to be good at this.
Thank you. And I think we got one last polling question, and then we're going to ask audience questions for the panel. Scale of 1 to 10, how would you grade this statement? Quote, everyone in our company is engaged in organized, agenda-driven weekly meetings. Everyone in our company is engaged in organized, agenda-driven weekly meetings. So 1, I completely disagree. 5, I completely agree. And then anywhere in between. And looks like we've got some 2s and some 4s there. Pete, since the L10 meetings were kind of your favorite, if you reflect back again on where you were prior to EOS and where you are today. Any observations, opinions, reactions to that poll?
So I think that's, I mean, I think for any organization, that's significant, right? I mean, if that's a significant goal to have everyone in the organization involved in meetings every week, and certainly we're not there yet. As I said, we've rolled out the people that are involved in EOS and EOS rollout. Those teams certainly are. But I'd say, company-wide, we've got 75 people here, and we've probably got, let's say, 20 or 25 that are involved in EOS. Other meetings for us would be stand-up safety meetings, that kind of thing. But so we have a ways to go there. But certainly back to the question around meeting effectiveness, our meetings are very effective now. So the meetings that they're in, or that the L10 kind of gets that into your head. And so we used to talk a lot about meeting ground rules and is this meeting effective and why does this person keep talking? And there's none of that anymore. I mean, it's the meetings are productive, but we need to go wider.
One follow-up question, and then Ann, I'm going to ask you to open the floor to audience questions. Pete, one follow-up question to you. Have you found that there's been a reduction overall in the time in meetings since EOS? You talked about, you made a comment, gosh, I can't imagine being in a 90-minute meeting every single week. Has it reduced the quantity of meetings overall? Is it the same? Is it more? Well,
we've got a lot of balls in the air right now relative to project launches and things like that. It seems like there are a lot of meetings, although I think they're effective and they're necessary. So I don't know that it necessarily reduced the quantity of meetings. I mean, a little bit to Melissa's point. I mean, there was probably meetings that weren't occurring that needed to occur. So I don't know relative to the quantity, but certainly people don't get together unless it's for a good reason and a very structured agenda. Got it.
Well, thank you, panelists. Audience, we're going to open up the floor to you. I think we've captured a few questions on the fly, and I'll ask for those that you may have compiled, if you would read those, and the panelists can respond, and I actually might respond a little as well. We've got about 10 or 15 minutes for that.
All right. Our first question is, how does EOS implementation change for organizations that have multiple business units or divisions?
If any of the panelists want to handle it, I'll be happy to yield the floor. Otherwise, I'll be happy to answer that one too. Well, I'll jump in then and just say that ironically, I actually work with a couple of organizations and implement for a specific division of a larger organization. So the organization has well over 500 employees, but we implement in a division of that particular organization. We didn't talk a lot about this 2-page business plan, also known as the V as in Victor, TO, Vision Traction Organizer. The way that works and the way that Ken, Melissa, and Pete would use it is that the vision piece, the 1-page vision, which is the long-range goal, the 10-year or 5-year goal, as well as our core values, our core focus. Who are we at our core, our marketing strategy? Those things don't really change. In that context, a larger organization's 1 year, or excuse me, first page vision page would remain consistent. A departmental level or a division level is almost consistent with, oh, this is the sales group, this is the operations group, this is the marketing group. In this context, this is the division group, and that 1 year goal for the division is X, and their 90-day priorities are Y, and the issues holding them back are Z. And so there's a way to incorporate both the corporate entity, the larger entity, as well as the individual division of, and you can implement EOS consistently across multiple divisions. So I hope that answered the question. Feel free to ask a follow-up if not. Ann, do we have another question?
All right. One was an observation when we were talking about potential downsides. That was that Another downside might be if an organization recently implemented an alternative system with structure, language, et cetera, that differs from EOS. EOS might be a confusing tech.
Ah, yeah. Pete, Melissa, or Ken, any comment or perspective that you would add there?
I mean, I'd say we've implemented a lot of things over the years. I think some even before my time. So yes, it might have some similarities or run parallel to something, but I think once you get going with it, like Ken said, you have to be all in on it. So yes, it might be confusing, but as soon as you get buy-in, I think you just start running with that and going down that path. But we've tried to, we've had people say, well, remember when we tried this thing? Remember when we tried this, this different thing? But you have, the leadership has to make a decision that we're all in and this is how our business is going to run now and how we're going to look. And once you commit to that, I think it might have some similarities to something else, but you just run with it.
We teach day one within the first hour, Melissa. You might remember going way back, there are multiple operating systems to run a business. There are other things in addition to EOS. We just need to commit to one.
Right.
And we don't Frankenstein them, meaning I'm going to take some of this and some of that, or I'm going to do these 3 things from EOS, but these 2 things I'm not. The system works holistically. The pieces, parts all work together in concert. So you're right. We have to commit to it. Ken said that. You're saying that now. It's not for everyone. That's a big deal. It's got to be a fit for you. I personally was drawn to this because of the simplicity of it. For some people, it's almost too simple, and that's okay. It's probably not a fit. But
well, Dan, I think not to interrupt you, but I think that a lot of times, like you said, we might be running on about Frankensteining things because we might go to a leadership conference or something in our industry and we hear a speaker and they talk about something and like, oh yeah, we really need to hone in on XYZ in our business. But EOS makes it all fit instead of just trying to do this thing and run as far as it'll take us and then we stop. So this really does simplify it to make it manageable within the organization.
Yeah, and again, I believe customizing it so that you can incorporate pieces, parts of other things, but we need to recognize, oh, you're running on EOS. I get it. You twisted here, you turn there. That's cool. That's unique for you. Ken, it sound like you were about to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, as I mentioned, I was in an organization where it failed. And what I would say is the key difference is if the leadership is not focused on it, it'll reflect the leadership's commitment, because the organization I was at where it didn't succeed, it was led by a person that just kind of liked to try stuff, right? So something would catch his attention and that was going to be the next thing you did. And so, to Melissa's point, you can't, that can't be the approach. It's got to be the leadership's going to say, this is what we're going to do. And this is it. Let's go.
Yeah. And another question.
Yep. This is actually going back to the Delegate to Elevate tool that Melissa described. And that is, if there's a hate the job and you're not good at position for the employee, is it worth assisting that person to grow, to like the job, or is it just hopeless in the effort?
Panel, what do you think?
Well, I would say it's not the whole job, probably. Like we're looking at specific things within that role. So if they just hate their whole life and job in general, then you probably need to analyze whether it's the right person for that position. But if there's just a little aspect of it that it really drains them, then gosh, look at it and see, and you think that they're a value to the company, I think it's worth it to the business to, reevaluate that specific function to help that person grow. Not sure if that answers the question, Dan.
Yeah, we talk about right people, right seats. So if they're a cultural fit and they're in alignment with what we value in terms of our core values, but they're not necessarily a great fit for the seat, either we can modify the role responsibilities in that seat that might speak to this question, or we coach up. or coach out. And so I'm picking up a little bit, I'm interpreting what you had said, Melissa, for, oh my gosh, if they don't like any of their role responsibility, what we teach, Melissa, what you've maybe heard me say is we have an obligation as a leadership team, as owners and leaders of companies, to put people in capacity to succeed, to have energy and enjoy what they do. That is part of our obligation. And then to give them the tools and the resources and the training and et cetera, our time and attention to help them succeed. If we can't do that and they're not a good fit, we have an obligation to find a better fit for them. So that may or may not be directly related, but it seemed relevant to mention there. So, and we've got maybe 5 more minutes here. Any other questions you wanted to throw out to the panel?
Yep. I think a good one to ask is, what is the visionary and the integrator, and how are the roles determined?
Aha. Panel, what the heck is a visionary and an integrator, and how's that determined?
Well, for me, it started with, there was no way I was going to be the integrator. You know, I wasn't organized enough to be the integrator. So that was the easy one was, so I promoted myself to the position. I don't know if it's promotion. I moved myself over to the visionary. The integrator is so important. I mean, the integrator's it. I was very fortunate to have Ann Shaw on the call here, who is, you know, super bright, very organized, really bought in and brought a lot of energy. So, you know, the visionary can be the visionary, and that's a fun job to have, but the integrator is where the rubber meets the road in this process. And that's where you really have to focus. And Pete, I know you were the integrator, so you can go ahead and talk about it from your perspective, being that person.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, at a high level, really, what you consider the visionary as just what it sounds like, right? It's like a person that generates a lot of ideas. And the thing about visionaries, I think, at least the ones that I know, is that they're not constrained, right? So there's just all these ideas, and we should do this, and we should do this, and the fact that they're not constrained is good. But the integrator is really the filter between the visionary and the organization, right? So there's a filtering of ideas, and then there's an implementation and a lot of management that goes into that, and that's really the integrator's role. So and I think the one thing about, and how is it determined? It's genetics. To a certain extent, I mean, it's not like, I personally, I come from a family of, we didn't call it that, of integrators. So, I mean, if you look at my family, that's kind of that's the way that we sort of run our lives. But yeah, so it's pretty obvious. And people, they're, tend to be, I think, they just have a lot of ideas. And sometimes, if you can't filter those ideas and put them on implementation tracks, things can get kind of tied up in organizations.
So I'll add this commentary. These are gross generalizations. Visionary, big picture, big ideas, sees around corners. What's going to happen next? Where could we zig or zag? Often has a pulse of the culture. Integrator, very detail oriented, removes obstacles and barriers sometimes holding us back. The Wickman uses in EOS is harmoniously orchestrates all the moving pieces, parts in the organization to work together seamlessly. Okay, likes the granularity. A visionary often doesn't. So this visionary integrator combination, really critically important. There's a concept called rocket fuel in EOS. There's a book about it. There's teaching classes around it. It is the octane that fuels a company forward when you get a really good match of a visionary and an integrator in an organization, and then they're working together to help drive that traction or leadership team running on EOS. So
yeah, and the other thing to consider is, I think once you label it, and once everybody understands their role and supports the roles, that it becomes much more powerful.
Yeah.
In other words, there's
yeah, it's actually pretty easy. It's actually pretty easy to identify, to Pete's point. It is genetic.
It is, and just so that the audience can crawl inside for 1 minute inside of a room, when we identify these people, the room actually is making nominations. It's back like you're in high school in homeroom, and we literally nominate for roles. We craft role first and structure an organization first. What do we need for the next 6 to 12 months in order to propel us forward? Once we've done that, then and only then do we nominate individuals that might fit those roles. And then we do something called real-time performance review. And Ken, you might remember this. We literally grade the different people if we've got more than one person who thinks they may be appropriate. And there's a method to do that in EOS until we get really good fits. So it works itself through, and you're right, I agree with the panelists. When you get that combination, it's really powerful, and the integrator is a key function there. They build the whole thing together. So we just have a couple of minutes. I'm going to ask the panelists if they have one closing comment that they'd like to make for the audience, any one last key takeaway, and then I'm going to put back up on the screen if you want a copy of the book or if you want more information, how to get a hold of me. But Ken, you happen to be up on my screen first. If you've got any closing thought, closing comments to impart on our audience, what would that be?
Just be that this is not just another consultant coming in to tweak the organization. You know, this is as we've talked about, I just can't emphasize it enough. It's a commitment by the organization to be facilitated to move yourself forward. And I've never been involved with anything that's been this impactful on an organization that I've been involved with. And if you want to do that, if that's what you want to do, then you know, I've never experienced anything that matches up to this process.
Terrific. Melissa, you happen to be next at the top of my screen, and then Pete.
So I would say, I'm assuming those on the call are in some kind of manager leadership type of capacity at their organizations, and care about the growth of the business and the growth of the people. And EOS really is a tool to help turn that caring into action and really grow your people, grow your business, and give you a platform and some kind of simple ways to execute that when it all seems very overwhelming and we're in these challenging times already with our industries and things. It gives you the simplicity to be able to execute something.
Thank you. And Pete, you'll have the last word here.
Yeah, I guess for us, I would just say that EOS is in our DNA now. So it's not like we would never think of running this organization any other way. And I can tell you this, many on my leadership team are going to have much longer careers. Their careers are going to be much longer than mine. You know, I've been at the tail end. So, but I mean, my general sense is they will be running businesses on either this business or other businesses, you know, utilizing EOS also.
Perfect. Well, thank you again to our panelists, Ken Patsey, Melissa Book, Pete Accorti. Also, thank you to Ann Schaum for helping administrate and behind the scenes. Again, I'm Dan Rose. If you're interested in a copy of the book free or to arrange a workshop, I'm happy to do that. There's a core value in EOS that is help first and do the right thing. And happy to do that if there's an interest in a workshop on site for you as well. So with that, I think that's the end of our presentation. Thank you again to the panelists. Thank you, Ann, and thank you for those who attended.
Yeah, later.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.